Your brain isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to over millions of years of evolution. Imagine your mind as a master engineer, fine-tuned for survival in an ancient world where every decision was a matter of life or death. This deep-rooted programming has shaped our behavior in ways that now often feel at odds with the demands of modern life. Think back to the era of hunter-gatherers, where conserving energy was crucial. Why waste precious calories on unnecessary movement when you could rest and preserve your strength? Our ancestors didn't chase immediate rewards. They waited for the perfect moment to pounce, ensuring maximum efficiency. But today, that same brain is being asked to do something it wasn't built for: thrive in a world of endless opportunities and distractions. Consider how our brains light up at the sight of fast food or the ping of a notification. These triggers are hardwired into our systems, designed to capture our attention and deliver quick rewards. The problem arises when we confuse modern temptations with genuine needs. Our limbic system, responsible for emotions and survival instincts, reacts instinctively to these stimuli, often overriding our rational thoughts. The idea that sheer willpower can overcome these biological tendencies is a myth. It's like trying to push against the tide. Eventually, you'll tire. Instead of fighting your brain, understand it. Recognize that every time you reach for junk food or scroll through social media, you're not failing. Your brain is merely responding to its default programming. This insight isn't just academic. It has real-world applications. By acknowledging these biological tendencies, we can reframe our approach to discipline. It's not about forcing change, but designing systems that align with how our brains naturally operate. This shift in perspective turns the struggle into a game of strategy, where we work with our biology rather than against it. In this new paradigm, discipline isn't something to be endured but engineered. By understanding and leveraging these insights, you can create environments and habits that make desired actions easier and more intuitive, a true hack for your brain's design. Our brains evolved over thousands of years in an environment vastly different from today's world of endless opportunities and distractions. This evolution shaped our neural circuits to prioritize immediate rewards, ensuring survival in a harsh landscape where resources were scarce and threats abundant. Our ancestors' success depended on quickly responding to cues that promised food, safety, or reproductive chances, responses that triggered the release of dopamine and other feel-good neurotransmitters. In this context, modern temptations like fast food and social media exploit our brain's ancient reward system. Fast food companies engineer flavors that trigger intense pleasure, hijacking the same pathways activated by finding sustenance in the wild. Similarly, platforms like Instagram or TikTok are designed to deliver instant gratification through likes and notifications, activating our dopamine system repeatedly and creating an addiction loop. The science behind this lies in neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, which regulate motivation, mood, and stress responses. Dopamine, in particular, plays a crucial role in reinforcing behaviors that are essential for survival. However, in today's world, these systems often work against us, leading to overconsumption and poor decision-making. Psychological studies, such as the marshmallow test, highlight our brain's struggle with delayed gratification. Children who could resist eating a marshmallow in favor of a larger reward later demonstrated better self-control and life outcomes, underscoring how challenging it is to override immediate rewards for long-term benefits. Traditional methods of building discipline, which rely heavily on willpower, often fail because they attempt to force change against our natural tendencies. Instead, effective strategies involve understanding and leveraging our brain's design. For example, creating habits through consistent small actions, like flossing daily or journaling each morning, can rewire neural pathways over time. Environmental engineering is another powerful tool. By organizing your workspace to minimize distractions and placing healthier options within reach, you can influence your behavior without constant effort. Technology can also be harnessed for good, such as using apps to track progress and celebrate small wins with micro rewards. Sleep and stress management are crucial factors too. Chronic stress alters brain structure, impairing the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate impulsive behaviors. Ensuring adequate sleep supports decision-making and self-control, helping us navigate temptations more effectively. Mindfulness emerges as a key practice in this context. By cultivating awareness, we can recognize when our default impulses are driving decisions and respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. This mindfulness allows us to align our actions with long-term goals rather than immediate gratification. In essence, understanding our biological predispositions empowers us to engineer environments and habits that support discipline effortlessly. By working with, not against, our brain's design, we can foster sustainable change and achieve our goals without constant struggle. In delving deeper into our biological predispositions, it's fascinating to reflect on historical practices that anticipated modern scientific insights. Ancient civilizations understood the importance of aligning actions with natural tendencies, employing structured routines and communal practices to foster discipline. For instance, monastic orders have long used strict schedules and isolated environments to cultivate focus and self-control, principles that resonate with today's strategies for habit formation and environmental engineering. Habit formation is rooted in neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. Research by neuroscientist Dr. Michael Merzenich highlights how consistent small actions create new neural pathways, making desired behaviors increasingly automatic over time. This process explains why flossing daily or journaling can eventually become ingrained habits, as the brain adapts through repeated activation of these pathways. Environmental engineering has been a strategy for centuries, with historical figures like Benjamin Franklin advocating for structured environments to cultivate virtue. The concept of proximity control involves arranging spaces to facilitate desired behaviors. For example, placing healthier foods at eye level in the fridge, or keeping exercise gear visible encourages positive choices without conscious effort. Ergonomic designs, such as standing desks, further enhance focus and productivity by optimizing physical comfort. Technology's role in habit formation is amplified through gamification, where apps leverage reward systems akin to video games. Habitica, for instance, turns daily tasks into quests, offering points and achievements that motivate users to stay consistent. This taps into our intrinsic reward system, making tedious tasks more engaging and sustainable. The impact of sleep on cognitive functions cannot be overstated. Studies show that sleep deprivation significantly impairs decision-making and self-control by affecting the prefrontal cortex. Conversely, adequate rest enhances these functions, crucial for resisting temptations and maintaining discipline. The implications are profound. Prioritizing sleep is not just a health guideline, but a strategy for achieving long-term goals. Stress management is equally vital, as chronic stress remodels brain structures like the hippocampus and amygdala, impairing memory and increasing anxiety. Techniques such as mindfulness-based stress reduction have been shown to mitigate these effects by fostering resilience and emotional regulation. The origins of mindfulness trace back to Buddhist practices over 2,500 years ago, emphasizing awareness and acceptance. Modern neuroscience corroborates its benefits, with fMRI studies demonstrating increased gray matter density in brain regions associated with self-control and emotion regulation after mindfulness practice. Mindfulness's integration into modern psychology underscores its universal applicability. Biohacking communities further exemplify how combining ancient wisdom with cutting-edge science can transform lives. These practices show that understanding our biology allows us to navigate challenges effectively, aligning actions with long-term goals rather than fleeting impulses. In essence, by leveraging historical insights and scientific research, we can create a holistic approach to disciplining the brain. This comprehensive strategy, combining habit formation, environmental optimization, technological tools, sleep management, stress reduction, and mindfulness, empowers us to achieve our goals effortlessly, working in harmony with our biological design rather than against it. Cognitive ease is not just a concept, it's a fundamental operating system deeply embedded within your brain. Imagine your mind as a river, always seeking the easiest path to flow. This tendency isn't a flaw, it's a feature shaped by millions of years of evolution. Your ancestors didn't ponder over complex decisions, they acted on instinct to survive. The human brain is wired for efficiency, preferring the path that requires the least mental energy. Attempting to force discipline through sheer willpower is akin to swimming against the current. It's exhausting and unsustainable because you're working against your biological design. Consider historical societies where immediate rewards were prioritized. Hunter-gatherers focused on the fruits of today rather than tomorrow's uncertain harvest. Modern life presents a stark contrast, demanding delayed gratification in an environment that still triggers our ancient instincts. The brain is like a sophisticated machine designed to conserve energy. When faced with tasks that demand focus, it defaults to the path of least resistance. This isn't weakness, it's survival strategy. Think of your mind as a river. Once it carves a channel, water follows that path effortlessly. Similarly, your brain will gravitate towards established routines unless redirected. In the context of discipline, this means relying on effort alone is a losing battle. Instead, consider redirecting the flow by modifying the landscape, your environment. For instance, placing distractions out of reach or automating desired actions can alter the default path your brain takes. This approach isn't about exerting willpower, but engineering an ecosystem where effortlessness drives desired outcomes. Understanding this shift from effort to design is pivotal. By aligning your environment with your goals, you're not just making tasks easier, you're rewiring your neural pathways to favor success. Each small adjustment reduces friction, making it more natural for your brain to choose the right path. This insight transforms the narrative of discipline from one of struggle to one of strategic design. It's about working with your brain's natural inclinations rather than against them, setting up systems that nudge you towards success without constant battle. The concept of cognitive ease, as explored by Daniel Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow, reveals a fundamental truth about human behavior. Our brains are wired to seek efficiency. Imagine your mind as an energy-saving machine. It prefers paths of least resistance to conserve mental resources. This isn't a sign of weakness, but a survival strategy honed over millennia. The ancient Greeks understood this implicitly, with philosophers like the Stoics advocating for control over one's environment, rather than relying on sheer willpower. Consider the story of Mark Zuckerberg in his early days at Facebook. Recognizing the distraction that open offices posed, he moved to a windowless room filled with whiteboards and essential tools, creating an environment where creativity and focus flourished without external interruptions. This strategic restructuring wasn't about brute effort. It was about engineering success by aligning the surroundings with the desired outcome, productivity. In the realm of neuroscience, recent studies highlight how our brains physically change when exposed to new environments. Neurons form new pathways through consistent exposure to different stimuli or settings, a process known as neuroplasticity. This means that by altering your environment, you can literally rewire your brain to favor behaviors aligned with your goals. Think about the challenge of dieting or saving money, situations where immediate rewards clash with long-term objectives. Our ancestors evolved in environments where immediate gratification was often necessary for survival, making it difficult to adapt to today's delayed reward scenarios. This evolutionary mismatch explains why relying solely on willpower is so ineffective in modern contexts. Interestingly, technology plays a dual role here. While devices like smartphones are designed to capture our attention, they can also be repurposed as tools for focus and productivity through apps that block distracting websites or remind you of tasks at optimal times. Yet, there are challenges when one resists environmental restructuring. Constant reliance on willpower leads to mental fatigue and burnout, as seen in studies where individuals trying to exert self-control over extended periods experience significant stress and eventual breakdowns. So how can you effectively redesign your environment? Start by decluttering spaces to eliminate distractions, using technology tools that support focus, or implementing habit-friendly routines, like setting specific times for tasks. Each adjustment reduces cognitive friction, making it easier for your brain to default to positive choices. In essence, the shift from effort to design isn't just a theoretical concept. It's a practical strategy rooted in both ancient wisdom and modern science. By understanding these principles, you can align your environment with your goals, fostering discipline through strategic planning rather than sheer willpower. This approach not only makes success more sustainable, but also taps into our brain's natural inclination to seek ease and efficiency. Throughout history, humans have grappled with the challenge of maintaining self-discipline, often relying on willpower alone. However, the concept of environmental design offers a more sustainable approach by restructuring our surroundings to support desired behaviors. This idea is not new. Ancient communities meticulously planned their environments to foster specific norms and values. Temples, town squares, and marketplaces were strategically placed to encourage social interactions and communal activities, effectively shaping cultural practices without relying solely on individual resolve. In the educational realm, schools are increasingly adopting design thinking to enhance learning outcomes. For instance, flexible seating arrangements and collaborative spaces encourage engagement and creativity, shifting focus from enforcing rules to creating an environment where learning is intuitive. Similarly, workplaces like Google and Apple have embraced open-plan offices and ergonomic designs to boost productivity and employee well-being, demonstrating how physical space can influence professional behavior. The nudge theory, championed by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, provides a compelling framework for understanding the power of environmental cues. By making desired choices easier through subtle changes, such as placing healthier food options at eye level in cafeterias, we can significantly alter behavior without coercion. This approach leverages cognitive ease by reducing the mental effort required to make good decisions. Numerous studies underscore the effectiveness of environmental restructuring over willpower. A notable experiment involved two groups of office workers, one with candy on their desks and another with it 2 meters away, wrapped in foil. The farther group consumed fewer treats, highlighting how minor adjustments can yield significant behavioral changes. This illustrates that even small tweaks to our environment can make desired actions more accessible and default choices. The implications for mental health are profound. By alleviating the constant strain of decision-making through strategic design, we reduce stress and prevent burnout. For instance, individuals struggling with productivity might benefit from a structured workspace with clear task zones, eliminating the need for ceaseless self-motivation. While technology, particularly apps like Forest or Focus at Will, has become a cornerstone in personal environmental design, physical spaces remain crucial. Ergonomic furniture and greenery in offices enhance comfort and focus, aligning with our natural inclination towards environments that promote well-being. Even wearable tech, by monitoring stress levels and suggesting breaks, integrates technology into our ecosystem of cues. Yet, it's essential to recognize the limitations of environmental design. In emergencies or unexpected situations, willpower may still be necessary despite optimal setups. Moreover, personal choice plays a role in how we adapt to structured environments, though the foundation for these choices is often laid by our surroundings. In conclusion, while willpower has its place, particularly in exigent circumstances, designing our environment to foster discipline and ease should be our primary strategy. By integrating historical insights with modern technological advancements, we can create spaces that not only support our goals, but also enhance well-being. This approach taps into the brain's natural preference for efficiency, making success more attainable and sustainable by aligning effort with environmental cues rather than sheer willpower alone. In Module 3, The Illusion of Free Choice, we delve into how our environments shape our decisions, often without us realizing it. Our brains are wired to take the path of least resistance, influenced by what's around us rather than relying solely on willpower. Cognitive ease is a key concept here. It drives us toward comfort and convenience. When designing your environment, Consider how friction can be reduced for desired actions while increased for distractions. For example, placing phones away from beds and keeping running shoes visible creates an environment that nudges you toward exercise. Historically, cities have been designed to influence behavior. From market placements to public spaces, these layouts subtly guide daily choices. Applying this principle today means engineering your space to support your goals, whether it's a quiet reading corner or a decluttered workspace. Behavioral engineering involves strategic placement of objects and tasks. By making desired actions easy and distractions hard, you can alter your habits without constant effort. This approach taps into our natural tendency to conserve energy, aligning with how our ancestors navigated their environments. Small, friction-free actions accumulate over time. Voting for a new identity, each consistent choice reshapes your sense of self, proving that transformation happens through environment and habit rather than sheer willpower. This understanding shifts focus from internal struggle to external design, offering a sustainable approach to fostering discipline. By crafting an environment that supports your goals, you navigate the world with less resistance, making choices aligned with your aspirations effortlessly. As we continue to explore how our environment shapes our choices, it's worth delving deeper into the concept of friction and its role in decision-making. Friction, in this context, refers to any obstacle or effort required to perform an action. When friction is low, actions become more appealing, while high friction makes them less so. This principle has been leveraged by designers, architects, and policymakers for centuries to influence behavior. One of the earliest examples of friction engineering can be found in the layout of ancient cities. In medieval Europe, for instance, markets were often centralized in town squares not just for convenience, but to control trade and monitor transactions. By clustering commerce in one place, authorities reduced the effort required for people to engage in economic activities, making it more likely they would participate. Similarly, public spaces like plazas and forums were designed as hubs for social interaction, where citizens could gather, discuss ideas, and make decisions collectively. In modern times, this concept has evolved into what we now call nudge theory, a behavioral science approach that uses environmental design to guide behavior in a predictable way without restricting choice. The term was popularized by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in their 2008 book, Nudge: Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness. Nudge theory operates on the premise that people are inherently lazy and prefer convenience, so subtle changes in how choices are presented can significantly alter decision-making. One fascinating application of nudge theory is in the realm of public health. Consider the case of organ donation rates across Europe. In some countries, individuals must actively opt in to become donors, while others assume consent unless individuals explicitly opt out. Research has shown that opt-out systems result in significantly higher donorship rates because they reduce friction. People tend to stick with defaults, unless there's a strong reason to change them. This principle extends to personal behavior as well. For example, if you want to encourage yourself or others to eat healthier, simply making fruits and vegetables more visible and accessible while moving less healthy options out of sight can create a nudge toward better dietary choices. This aligns with the idea that our environment often dictates what we choose, even when we think we're acting purely on willpower. The psychological underpinnings of this phenomenon are rooted in something called inertia. Humans are naturally inclined to resist effort and prefer paths of least resistance. This tendency is a product of evolution. Our ancestors conserved energy for critical tasks like hunting or escaping danger, leading us to favor efficiency in modern contexts as well. It's also worth noting that friction isn't always bad. In some cases, introducing deliberate obstacles can actually improve decision quality by forcing us to think more carefully about our choices. For example, requiring a waiting period before finalizing a purchase can reduce impulse buying by giving individuals time to reconsider their actions. Another area where friction plays a crucial role is in habit formation. Studies have shown that people are more likely to stick with new habits if the associated actions require minimal effort. This explains why small, incremental changes, like keeping workout clothes visible or placing healthy snacks within arm's reach, are so effective. These minor adjustments lower the barrier to entry, making it easier to adopt and maintain desired behaviors. In the digital age, friction engineering has taken on new dimensions. Apps and websites are designed with user experience in mind, often employing subtle cues to guide behavior. For instance, autocomplete features on search engines reduce cognitive load by predicting what we want, while add to cart buttons are strategically placed to encourage impulse purchases. These techniques aren't manipulative per se, they're simply leveraging our natural tendencies to make decisions more efficiently. However, there's a darker side to this concept as well. Retailers and other organizations have been using friction engineering for decades to influence consumer behavior in ways that benefit their bottom line. For example, placing candy at checkout counters creates an impulse purchase opportunity when customers are already in the process of completing their transaction, minimizing effort and maximizing likelihood. Despite its potential for misuse, understanding friction can empower individuals to take control of their own decision-making processes. By recognizing how external factors influence our choices, we can consciously redesign our environments to support our goals, rather than undermine them. This approach flips the script on traditional notions of self-control, which often rely on sheer willpower, a finite and easily depleted resource. One particularly interesting aspect of friction engineering is its application in education and workplace settings. Educators can design curricula that minimize cognitive load by presenting information in clear, digestible formats, while employers can structure workflows to reduce distractions and streamline tasks. These strategies not only improve productivity but also make it easier for individuals to stay focused on their goals. It's also worth exploring the concept of dark patterns, which are manipulative interfaces designed to trick users into making decisions they might not otherwise make. Unlike benevolent friction engineering, dark patterns exploit psychological biases to encourage behaviors that benefit the designer at the user's expense. A classic example is the use of social proof in online shopping, where websites display fake customer reviews or buy it now buttons to create a sense of urgency. In contrast to dark patterns, ethical friction engineering focuses on transparency and user empowerment. By designing interfaces that align with users' best interests, we can create more positive outcomes without compromising their autonomy. This approach respects the user's ability to make informed decisions while still guiding them toward beneficial choices. The implications of friction engineering extend far beyond individual behavior change. On a societal level, it offers a powerful tool for addressing some of our most pressing challenges, from public health crises to environmental sustainability. For example, governments could implement policies that nudge citizens toward energy-efficient behaviors by making eco-friendly options the default choice in utility plans or workplace settings. Looking ahead, as technology continues to advance, so too will the techniques used to engineer friction and influence behavior. The key will be to strike a balance between leveraging these tools for positive outcomes and maintaining awareness of their potential for misuse. By doing so, we can create environments that truly support our goals while preserving our ability to make meaningful choices. Ultimately, the lesson here is clear. Human behavior isn't just about internal resolve, but also about the world around us. By understanding how friction shapes our decisions and actively designing environments that align with our aspirations, we can achieve lasting change without relying on sheer willpower. This shift from self-control to strategic design represents a fundamental paradigm shift in how we approach discipline, one that's both more sustainable and effective than traditional methods. In Module 4, we explore neural hijacking through habit stacking, a powerful strategy to reshape your behavior by leveraging existing routines. This technique taps into our brain's natural inclination to follow established pathways, making it easier to adopt new habits without relying on willpower. Habit stacking works by attaching new behaviors to cues you already respond to, such as brushing your teeth or arriving at work. For instance, someone who consistently brushes their teeth might start flossing right after, turning an occasional task into a daily habit. The neurological loop cue routine reward is crucial here. When you consistently link actions, the brain begins to automate these behaviors, reducing the effort needed. This automation allows new habits to form alongside existing ones, creating a chain of actions that become second nature over time. However, challenges arise when trying to break old habits or form new ones. Motivation often wanes, but momentum can sustain behavior. By focusing on small, manageable steps and embedding them into familiar routines, you create an environment where habits naturally evolve. Strategies include identifying current routines and inserting new behaviors at logical points. Consistency is key. Even minor actions done daily contribute to long-term change. Celebrate these small wins to reinforce the habit-forming process. In conclusion, habit stacking offers a sustainable approach to building discipline by aligning with your brain's wiring. By structuring habits around your existing routines, you create lasting change that feels effortless over time, ultimately transforming your behavior and identity. The concept of neural hijacking and habit stacking is deeply rooted in the principles of neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Pioneered by researchers like Dr. Michael Merzenich, neuroplasticity highlights how our brains can adapt and change, even into adulthood. This adaptation is crucial for habit formation, as it allows us to create new pathways that override or reroute existing ones. Historically, the study of habits has been influenced by psychological theories such as those proposed by B.F. Skinner, who focused on operant conditioning, where behaviors are shaped by rewards and punishments. However, modern neuroscience offers a more nuanced understanding, emphasizing the brain's physical changes during habit formation. The basal ganglia, a key brain structure, plays a central role in converting repetitive actions into automatic habits, while the prefrontal cortex initially plans and executes these actions. Beyond the example of flossing after brushing teeth, consider how athletes might use habit stacking to enhance performance. A runner could pair putting on running shoes with stretching, reinforced by the feel of a good stretch. Similarly, in mental health, someone dealing with anxiety might attach deep breathing exercises to specific triggers, like arriving at work, thereby reducing stress automatically. The challenge in habit formation often stems from the strength of existing neural pathways. Breaking old habits is akin to removing well-established highways in the brain, while forming new ones requires building alternative routes that eventually become default. Factors influencing success include consistency. Daily practice strengthens these new pathways, and intrinsic motivation, which sustains behavior over time. Contrary to the popular 21-day myth, habit formation varies. Some studies suggest it can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days, depending on individual differences in context. This variability underscores the importance of patience and adaptability in habit stacking strategies. In education, teachers might encourage students by linking study habits to existing routines, like after breakfast or before bedtime. In business, companies could foster better practices by integrating new behaviors into employee routines, such as daily stand-up meetings that include a brief reflection on goals. Understanding these principles not only enhances personal development, but also opens avenues for innovation in various fields, from mental health apps leveraging habit stacking to improve user engagement, to corporate training programs that embed new skills seamlessly into daily workflows. By harnessing the power of neural hijacking, we can engineer lasting change that feels intuitive and effortless over time. Delving deeper into the concept of habit stacking, it's fascinating to trace its roots back to early psychological theories and practices. The idea that habits are deeply ingrained neural pathways isn't new. In fact, it dates back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with psychologists like Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner. Their work on conditioning laid the foundation for understanding how behaviors become automatic over time. However, it wasn't until more recent neuroscience advancements that we began to understand the biological mechanisms behind habit formation, particularly the role of dopamine in reinforcing these pathways. One of the most influential models in this area is the habit loop, popularized by Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit. This model outlines three key components: cue, routine, and reward. The cue triggers the brain to initiate a behavior. The routine is the habit itself, and the reward reinforces it, making the brain desire the routine again. This loop is crucial for understanding how neural hijacking works. By identifying and manipulating these components, we can rewire our brains to favor positive habits. In the context of mental health, habit stacking has proven particularly effective in replacing negative behaviors with healthier ones. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for instance, often employs strategies that align with habit stacking principles. Therapists may guide patients to associate cues linked to maladaptive behaviors with new positive routines, thereby creating rewarding experiences that gradually replace the old habits. For example, someone who reaches for comfort food when stressed might be encouraged to engage in a calming hobby instead, paired with a healthier snack. The application of these principles extends beyond individual therapy into broader societal impacts. Consider the rise of habit-forming apps and digital tools designed to encourage discipline. These platforms often use gamification techniques, achievements, streaks, and rewards to keep users engaged. By aligning with our brain's reward system, these apps make consistency feel less like a chore and more like an enjoyable challenge, effectively hijacking our neural pathways in a positive way. However, it's important to recognize the potential challenges and pitfalls of habit stacking. One common issue is overloading oneself with too many new habits at once. The brain can only handle so much change before it becomes overwhelmed, leading to resistance or burnout. Experts generally recommend focusing on one or two habits at a time, allowing each to become automatic before introducing others. Another consideration is the strength and clarity of the cues used to trigger new routines. A vague cue like "when I feel stressed" might not be strong enough to consistently trigger a desired behavior. Conversely, a specific cue like "after finishing my morning coffee" can be more effective because it's tied to a concrete event that occurs regularly. In educational settings, teachers are increasingly adopting habit stacking techniques to foster better study habits among students. For instance, some schools have integrated mindfulness practices into their daily routines, teaching students to take a few deep breaths right after the first bell rings. Over time, this simple routine can create a calm start to the day, setting a positive tone for learning. In business environments, companies are also leveraging these principles to enhance productivity and employee well-being. Google's 20% time policy is an example where employees are encouraged to dedicate 20% of their work time to personal projects. This policy fosters innovation by allowing employees to explore creative habits in a supportive environment, effectively stacking new behaviors into their daily workflows. Looking ahead, the implications for technology and habit formation are vast. As we continue to develop apps and tools that understand and manipulate our neural pathways, ethical considerations will come to the forefront. Ensuring that these technologies promote positive change without exploiting users' vulnerabilities will be crucial in maximizing their benefits while minimizing potential harms. In conclusion, habit stacking isn't just a novel concept. It's a powerful tool rooted in centuries of psychological theory and modern neuroscience. By understanding how our brains work and strategically designing environments that encourage new behaviors, we can effectively hijack our neural pathways to foster lasting, positive change. Whether in personal development, education, business, or technology, the applications are limitless, offering a promising path toward more disciplined and fulfilling lives. Procrastination. It's a word that carries shame, a whispered admission of failure, a judgment on our moral worth. But what if I told you that procrastination isn't about laziness or poor character? What if it's not even about motivation at all? Let's dig into the truth behind this misunderstood phenomenon. For centuries, humans have struggled with the concept of delay and inaction. In the Protestant work ethic, first articulated by Max Weber in the early 20th century, idleness was seen as a moral failing, a direct affront to divine will and productivity. This mindset shaped how we view procrastination as a lack of discipline, a sin against progress. But science has revealed something far more complex. Modern behavioral science tells us that procrastination isn't about motivation at all. It's about friction. When the action you need to take is difficult, unclear, or unappealing, your brain naturally resists it. This resistance isn't a moral failing. It's a survival mechanism. Your brain wants to conserve energy for more critical tasks. So when faced with something hard, it defaults to what feels easier. Procrastination. Think about this. Have you ever put off an important task because your workspace is cluttered, or the tools you need are buried under distractions? That's friction, the invisible barriers that make actions harder than they should be. On the other hand, have you ever completed a task without thinking because it was easy to start? That's low friction. The key to overcoming procrastination isn't to fight your brain, it's to change the environment. Reduce the friction on the actions you want to take and increase the friction on distractions. If your phone is next to your bed, it's not a moral failing that you scroll through social media instead of sleeping. It's an environmental design flaw. Here's how it works. When you make the desired action easier than the alternative, your brain defaults to it. This isn't about willpower, it's about choice architecture. For example, if you want to exercise more, don't just tell yourself to work out. Instead, lay out your workout clothes the night before, schedule your workout for the first thing in the morning, and keep a log to track progress. Lower the friction. But what about when you're stuck with something truly difficult? Something that feels overwhelming no matter how you set it up. That's where understanding the science of motivation comes into play. When tasks are invisible, hard, or unsatisfying, they naturally feel less appealing. To combat this, break them down into smaller, visible steps. Make progress feel rewarding in small ways. Celebrate tiny wins and adjust your environment to highlight those achievements. Remember, procrastination isn't a reflection of who you are. It's a symptom of the system you're operating within. By redesigning your environment to align with your goals, you can shift the balance from procrastination to productivity. This isn't about loving the grind or finding passion for every task. It's about engineering your world so that the effort required to act is less than the effort required to avoid it. So stop beating yourself up. The solution lies not in your willpower, but in the world around you. Redesign your systems, reduce friction, and watch as procrastination melts away, like ice under a warm sun. The roots of procrastination stretch far back into human history, where it was often viewed through the lens of moral failing or laziness. In ancient times, Roman philosophers like Seneca blamed procrastination on weakness of character, while later thinkers like John Stuart Mill saw it as a failure of self-control. But it wasn't until the 19th century that scientists began to understand procrastination as a psychological phenomenon rather than a moral defect. The study of procrastination gained momentum in the 20th century with the rise of behavioral psychology. B.S. Skinner, a pioneer in this field, conducted experiments showing how animals, and by extension humans, behave based on the immediate rewards or punishments they receive. His work revealed that tasks requiring delayed gratification are inherently more challenging for us because our brains are wired to prioritize actions that bring instant satisfaction. This idea of immediate versus delayed rewards is central to understanding procrastination. When faced with a task, your brain naturally asks, "What's in it for me right now?" If the answer isn't clear or appealing, your brain will default to something else, anything else, that offers more immediate payoff. This explains why you might choose to scroll through social media instead of tackling that report, even though completing the report would bring long-term benefits. Modern neuroscience has shed further light on this phenomenon by revealing the role of dopamine in decision-making. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter closely associated with feelings of pleasure and reward. When you engage in an activity that provides immediate gratification, like watching a video or eating something delicious, you trigger a release of dopamine, which reinforces the behavior. On the other hand, tasks that offer no immediate payoff, like studying for an exam or cleaning your room, don't activate this system, making them feel less appealing. This biological bias isn't something you can fix through sheer willpower. It's hardwired into our brains as a result of evolution. In prehistoric times, our ancestors needed to prioritize immediate rewards, like finding food or avoiding danger, to survive. The ability to focus on long-term goals evolved much later, and it hasn't had time to catch up with the demands of modern life. The rise of digital technology has only amplified this issue. Social media platforms, streaming services, and other forms of entertainment are meticulously designed to trigger dopamine releases, creating highly rewarding experiences that compete for your attention. At the same time, many tasks we face in school, work, or personal life require sustained effort without immediate rewards, making them feel aversive. One lesser-known aspect of procrastination is its relationship with fear and anxiety. Often people procrastinate not just because a task feels difficult, but because it triggers feelings of inadequacy or failure. This psychological response can create a vicious cycle. The more you avoid a task, the more daunting it becomes, which in turn makes you feel worse about yourself. But here's the good news. Understanding these underlying mechanisms gives us the power to redesign our environments and habits in ways that align with how our brains are naturally inclined to operate. This approach, often referred to as choice architecture, involves structuring your world so that the easier path is also the one that leads you closer to your goals. For example, consider the concept of implementation intentions. This strategy involves pairing a specific action with a specific context. Instead of vaguely intending to exercise, you might say, if it's 7 a.m. and I'm home, then I will do a 20-minute workout. By linking your goal to a concrete situation, you make it easier for your brain to follow through. Another powerful tool is the 5-second rule popularized by productivity expert James Clear. Whenever you feel the urge to procrastinate, you count down from 5 and commit to taking action during that brief window. This simple trick works because it forces you to act before your rationalizing mind can kick in and talk you out of it. The role of accountability cannot be overstated either. When we know someone else is expecting us to follow through, whether a friend, a coach, or even an app, we're more likely to stick to our commitments. This is why group fitness classes or study groups can be so effective. They create a sense of external accountability that makes it harder to back down. One of the most fascinating aspects of procrastination is its universality. People across cultures and centuries have grappled with it, yet we often treat it as a uniquely modern problem. The truth is that procrastination has always been part of the human condition, but our understanding of how to manage it has evolved alongside our knowledge of psychology and neuroscience. In fact, some of the earliest recorded attempts to conquer procrastination come from ancient philosophers like Aristotle, who emphasized the importance of habit formation and self-discipline. These ideas have carried through the ages and continue to inform modern productivity strategies. Yet, despite these time-tested insights, many people still struggle with procrastination because they approach it with the wrong mindset. Too often we see procrastination as a battle of willpower, something that requires constant effort and determination. But this perspective is fundamentally flawed. Willpower is finite, and relying on it to overcome procrastination is like trying to swim upstream without any tools or support. Instead, we should focus on designing systems and environments that make the right actions easier and more appealing. This shift in thinking has profound implications for how we approach productivity. Rather than blaming ourselves for lacking motivation, we can start by asking, what obstacles am I creating that are making this task harder than it needs to be? How can I restructure my environment or routines to eliminate those barriers? One example of this is the concept of friction. In any system, whether a business process, a personal habit, or a daily routine, friction refers to the factors that make an action more difficult to perform. When you reduce friction, you make it easier for people to take the desired action. Think about the difference between traditional alarm clocks and apps like Habitica or Forest. A regular alarm clock forces you to get up and turn it off, which can be a source of friction in the morning. Apps like Habitica, on the other hand, incorporate game-like elements that make completing tasks more engaging and less stressful. Similarly, Forest uses a grow-your-own forest metaphor, where you set a timer and an adorable digital tree grows as long as you stay focused. Procrastinating causes your tree to wither. These kinds of design choices are rooted in behavioral psychology and aim to align with how our brains naturally respond to rewards and challenges. By making productive actions more rewarding and easier to execute, we can shift our behavior without relying on willpower or discipline. Another critical factor is the role of feedback loops. Our brains thrive on feedback because it tells us whether an action is worth repeating. When a task feels too big or vague, it's hard to see progress, which makes it easy to procrastinate. Breaking tasks into smaller steps and celebrating each milestone creates a steady stream of positive feedback that keeps you motivated. This principle is why platforms like Duolingo are so effective for language learning. Instead of overwhelming users with years-long goals, the app breaks down lessons into manageable chunks and showers users with praise and rewards for completing them. This consistent positive reinforcement makes it easier to stay engaged and keep progressing. The implications of this approach extend beyond individual productivity to entire industries and organizations. Companies that understand how to design systems with minimal friction and built-in feedback loops tend to see higher levels of engagement and performance from their employees. Similarly, schools and universities that adopt strategies like the no-fail policy or competency-based grading can reduce student stress and improve academic outcomes by making learning feel more rewarding and less intimidating. One of the most interesting developments in this field is the growing recognition of procrastination as a symptom rather than a cause. In other words, procrastination isn't something inherently wrong with you. It's your brain's way of signaling that there's an underlying issue, like lack of motivation, unclear goals, or excessive pressure, that needs to be addressed. This reframing shifts the focus from blaming yourself for procrastinating to investigating why you're procrastinating in the first place. It encourages a more compassionate and analytical approach to problem solving rather than one rooted in self-criticism and guilt. For instance, if you find yourself repeatedly putting off an important project at work, instead of beating yourself up about it, consider what factors might be contributing to your delay. Is the task too vague? Are you unsure about how to start? Do you feel like you're not getting enough support from others? Answering these questions can reveal actionable steps to address the root cause rather than just trying to fix the procrastination. This kind of thinking aligns with what's known as the procrastination paradox. The more pressure you put on yourself to avoid procrastinating, the more likely you are to do it. When we see procrastination as something we need to eliminate entirely, we set ourselves up for failure because it becomes yet another source of stress and anxiety. Instead, embracing a mindset of progress over perfection allows us to view procrastination not as an enemy, but as information. Every time you procrastinate, it's telling you something about the systems or environments in which you're operating. The goal isn't to never procrastinate, which is unrealistic, but to use these moments as opportunities to improve your setup and make future decisions easier. This approach also highlights the importance of self-compassion. Too often we treat procrastination as a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign that our current strategies aren't aligned with how our brains work best. By approaching it with curiosity and kindness, we can learn to tweak our systems and habits in ways that better support our goals. One final thought. The future of productivity isn't about harder work or more discipline. It's about smarter design. Whether that means redesigning your workspace, restructuring your routines, or rethinking how you communicate and collaborate with others. By understanding the science behind why we procrastinate and leveraging it to create environments that naturally nudge us toward action, we can overcome this timeless challenge in ways that feel sustainable and even enjoyable. Ultimately, the key takeaway is that procrastination isn't a problem of motivation, it's a problem of design. When you make the effort to align your environment with how your brain works, you'll find that discipline becomes far easier to embrace because it's no longer something you have to force. It's simply the path of least resistance, one that your mind and body are already inclined to take. The belief that you must fall in love with the process or enjoy the routine is one of the most damaging lies we tell ourselves. It's a myth perpetuated by countless productivity gurus and self-help books, promising that if you just find your passion or fall in love with the grind, discipline will magically follow. But here's the truth. Highly consistent people don't rely on passion to get things done. They build systems, cold, mechanical structures that make following through easier than not following through. For centuries, humanity has been obsessed with the idea of self-control, lionizing those who supposedly love the grind. Think of the hero who rises before dawn, fueled by nothing but sheer willpower and an unwavering passion for their craft. But this narrative is flawed. It ignores the fact that our brains are not designed to run on passion alone. They're designed to conserve energy and seek out paths of least resistance. The truth is, even the most disciplined individuals don't rely on love or passion to stay consistent. They create systems, habits, routines, structures that make following through easier than not following through. These systems are built over time, often without any deep-seated love for the task itself. Instead, they focus on making the desired behavior so frictionless and automatic that it becomes the default choice. Most of us don't start out loving the things we want to achieve. We start out reluctantly, dragging ourselves out of bed at 5 a.m., or forcing ourselves to hit the books when all we want to do is binge-watch TV. The key isn't to love the grind. The key is to design systems that make the grind unavoidable, so easy and so frictionless that it becomes the path of least resistance. This doesn't mean you'll suddenly develop an undying love for your tasks, but over time, consistent action shapes your identity in ways that make following through feel less like a chore. Think about it this way. When we talk about loving the grind, we're often romanticizing a state of being that's not actually sustainable. It's far more realistic and effective to focus on creating systems that remove the friction from your desired actions, making them so easy to execute that they become part of who you are. This approach has been used by some of history's most accomplished individuals. Take, for example, Elon Musk. He doesn't love every minute of running Tesla or SpaceX, but he builds systems, like his production line mentality and relentless focus on long-term goals, that ensure progress is inevitable. Or consider the scientist who spends decades in a lab, not because they love the grind, but because they've built processes that make discovery an unavoidable outcome. The myth of loving the grind also ignores the reality of motivation as a finite resource. Motivation fluctuates. It's influenced by everything from mood to external circumstances. But systems don't care about how you feel. They operate on logic, on structure, on habit. This is why so many people who claim to love their work burn out eventually, because they're relying on an unreliable source of fuel, passion, instead of building an engine that runs on cold, hard efficiency. So how do we build these systems? It starts with understanding that discipline isn't about brute force willpower. It's about engineering your environment and routines in such a way that the desired behavior becomes the default choice. This means setting up triggers and cues, stacking habits so they reinforce each other, and removing obstacles that stand between you and action. It also means embracing the idea that progress is often incremental and mechanical. You don't need to love your tasks to be consistent. You just need to make consistency easier than procrastination. This might mean automating certain aspects of your routine, breaking down big goals into tiny, manageable steps, or creating accountability structures that ensure you show up, whether you feel like it or not. Ultimately, the goal isn't to love the grind. It's to create a world where following through feels less like a struggle and more like the natural path. When you shift your focus from cultivating passion to building systems, you stop fighting with your brain and start working with it, harnessing the power of habit, structure, and environment to shape behavior in ways that feel sustainable and even enjoyable. Because here's the truth. No one loves every minute of what they do. But everyone can build a system that makes following through easier than not following through. And when you do, you don't just achieve your goals, you transform yourself into the kind of person who naturally shows up, day after day, regardless of how you feel. Throughout history, societies have grappled with the concept of discipline, often framing it as a battle between human will and external forces. Ancient philosophies, religions, and even modern psychology have all contributed to our understanding, or misunderstanding, of what it means to be disciplined. In many cultures, especially in religious contexts, discipline was often equated with suffering, or the idea was that true growth came from enduring hardship renouncing pleasures and pushing through discomfort. For example, in medieval Europe, monks would practice flagellation as a form of self-punishment believed to bring them closer to God. Similarly, in thought in China, the concept of lai, which refers to proper conduct and social order, was maintained through strict discipline and self-control. These traditions often viewed discipline as something that had to be forced upon oneself, a notion that still lingers today. But modern science has challenged this narrative. We now understand that human behavior is heavily influenced by our environment and the way we structure our lives, what psychologists call nudging theory. According to Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on behavioral economics, people respond to subtle changes in their environment, not just brute force willpower. One of the key insights from habit formation research is that our brains are wired to seek comfort and avoid pain. This means that forcing ourselves to do something we dislike usually backfires because it triggers our brain's protest mechanism. Instead of trying to love the grind, we should work with this natural inclination by making desirable behaviors feel easier and more rewarding. The automation of work. The rise of automation and technology has given us unprecedented tools to engineer our environment in ways that make discipline easier. For instance, apps like IFTTT allow users to automate repetitive tasks across different platforms. A writer could set up a trigger where every time they save a document on Google Drive, it automatically adds the file to their Dropbox account and sends them an email notification. Over time, this automation reduces friction and makes sticking to a writing routine feel less like a chore. In the workplace, tools like Nozzler automate social media management by scheduling posts in advance and analyzing engagement metrics. This allows entrepreneurs to focus on strategic tasks rather than getting bogged down by manual labor. By leveraging these technologies, we can create systems where discipline is built into the fabric of our environment, making it easier to stay consistent without relying on willpower. The science of motivation. Another critical aspect of tricking your brain into liking discipline is understanding how motivation works. Contrary to popular belief, people don't perform better when incentivized with rewards or punished for mistakes. This approach often leads to short-term compliance rather than long-term engagement. Research by Daniel Pink in his book Drive shows that humans are primarily motivated by three factors: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These intrinsic motivators are far more powerful than external rewards like money or recognition. When we frame discipline as a way to gain mastery over a skill or achieve a meaningful goal, it becomes less about suffering and more about personal growth. Moreover, studies in neuroscience reveal that our brains release dopamine when we complete tasks, especially if those tasks align with our goals. This creates a natural reward loop that makes us feel good about being disciplined. Over time, this positive association can make following through on tasks feel enjoyable rather than burdensome. The myth of passion and grit. One of the most pervasive myths in the world of self-improvement is the idea that success is solely the result of passion and grit. While these qualities are certainly important, they're not sufficient on their own. In fact, many high achievers don't love what they do in the moment. They simply show up consistently, despite their feelings. For example, Sir Isaac Newton was known to have periods of intense focus where he would work for hours without breaks, but this didn't mean he felt a constant passion for his work. Instead, he built systems and routines that made it easier for him to stay productive. Similarly, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart didn't love the grind of practicing music. Instead, he structured his days in such a way that practice became a natural part of his routine. The truth is that even highly disciplined individuals don't maintain their habits through sheer willpower alone. They rely on systems, structures, and environments that make consistency easier than procrastination. From grit to flow, in recent years, the concept of grit has gained popularity as a predictor of success. Grit refers to the ability to stick with tasks despite setbacks or boredom. However, this perspective can be limiting because it implies that people who lack grit are somehow deficient. Instead, We should focus on building systems that make gritty behaviors feel less effortful. Implications for modern life. The implications of this shift in understanding are profound. If we focus on creating systems rather than trying to force passion, we can achieve better results with less mental strain. This approach is particularly relevant in today's world, where technology and information overload make it harder to stay focused. In education, for instance, schools often try to instill discipline by punishing students when they fail to comply. However, a more effective strategy would be to redesign the learning environment so that good habits are easier to adopt. This could involve using habit stacking techniques, where new study habits are paired with existing routines, or implementing micro-learning strategies that break down complex subjects into manageable chunks. Similarly, in personal productivity, individuals can stop obsessing about loving their work and instead focus on building systems that make their goals easier to achieve. This might involve setting up a morning routine that primes the brain for success, using accountability partners, or leveraging technology to automate tedious tasks. Conclusion: ultimately, the myth of loving the grind has held us back by creating an unrealistic standard of excellence. It's impossible to enjoy every moment of what we do, but it is possible to design systems and environments that make following through feel natural and even enjoyable. By embracing this understanding, we can shift our focus from forcing passion to building sustainable habits. This approach not only makes discipline easier, but also transforms us into the kind of people who naturally show up day after day, regardless of how we feel. Every human being is a complex system of habits, beliefs, and behaviors, carefully calibrated over time. But what if we could hack this system? What if instead of struggling against our nature, we could reprogram it from the inside out? The truth is, your identity isn't something you have. It's something you're constantly becoming through your actions. Small, repetitive choices that shape who you are at a fundamental level. When you change your behavior, you don't just do one thing. You send ripples through your entire being. You signal to yourself that this new way of acting is who you are becoming. Think about it this way. When you consistently show up, even when you don't feel like it, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Each time you resist distraction, each time you stick to your routine, you're building a new narrative about who you are. Over time, these votes add up. They accumulate into a new identity, a version of yourself that is defined not by fleeting emotions or desires but by consistent actions. But here's the thing. Most people think about change in terms of willpower or effort. They believe they need to get motivated or find their passion. But this is a dangerous myth. The truth is, highly consistent people aren't driven by passion. They're driven by systems. They've built structures that make the right choices easier than the wrong ones. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you design your environment to make good choices effortless, you're not just making life easier. You're literally changing who you are at a fundamental level, because every action is a vote for a specific version of yourself. Every time you choose to exercise instead of watching TV, you're voting for the fit, disciplined person. Every time you resist junk food, you're voting for the healthy person. Over time, these votes add up until they define your identity. But what does this mean for you? It means that instead of fighting against yourself, you can align with your biology. Instead of trying to force passion or love for the process, you can build systems that make the right actions easier and more appealing than the wrong ones. And here's the ultimate truth. When you change your environment, you change your behavior. When you change your behavior consistently, you change your brain. And when you change your brain, you change your identity. Because at the end of the day, who you are is not just a sum of your actions. It's the story you're telling yourself through those actions. So stop trying to force passion or rely on willpower. Instead, focus on building systems that make the right choices easier than the wrong ones. Design environments that nudge you toward the person you want to become. Because when you do this, you're not just changing your habits. You're rewriting the story of whom you are. And in doing so, you'll find that discipline isn't something you struggle with. It's something that becomes part of your identity, a natural expression of who you've designed yourself to be. And this brings us to a fascinating discussion about the interplay between environment, behavior, and identity, a relationship that has been studied across centuries by philosophers, psychologists, and even neuroscientists. The concept of aligning with one's biology is not new. Ancient philosophies like Stoicism taught the importance of controlling what you can, your thoughts and actions, and accepting what you cannot. The Stoics understood that discipline was not about brute force, but about living in harmony with nature, including your own human nature. Similarly, Buddhist teachings emphasize the role of mindfulness and awareness in steering behavior away from harmful habits and towards self-improvement. But how do these ancient wisdoms apply to our modern understanding? Well, contemporary neuroscience reveals that the brain is highly plastic, meaning it can rewire itself based on repeated experiences and environments. This neuroplasticity explains why building systems that make good choices easier actually changes your brain over time, reinforcing new neural pathways associated with discipline and self-control. One lesser-known detail in this context is the concept of nudge theory. Originating from behavioral economics, nudge theory suggests that small environmental tweaks, like placing healthier food options at eye level or using default settings to encourage positive behaviors, can have a significant impact on decision-making. These subtle changes don't force people to act, but gently guide them toward better choices, aligning their actions with their desired identities. Another important aspect is the role of storytelling in shaping identity. Humans are natural story makers, and we often define ourselves through the narratives we create about our lives. When you consistently act in ways that match a certain story, say, the story of yourself as disciplined and goal-oriented, you reinforce that narrative at a neural level. Over time, this narrative becomes your default way of seeing yourself, making it easier to continue behaving in accordance with that identity. But here's where things get even more interesting. When you change your environment, you're not just influencing behavior, you're literally changing the structure of your brain. Studies have shown that people who consistently practice self-control or discipline actually experience changes in their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control. These changes make it easier to resist temptations in the future, as the brain becomes hardwired to prioritize long-term goals over immediate gratification. This has profound implications for personal growth. If you want to develop discipline, you don't need to rely on willpower alone, which is finite and prone to failure. But instead, you can engineer your environment and habits in such a way that discipline becomes the path of least resistance. For example, someone looking to build a writing habit might set up their workspace with everything they need within arm's reach, reducing the friction that often leads to procrastination. Another key insight is the importance of triggers and cues. Your surroundings are filled with stimuli that either support or undermine your goals. By consciously designing these triggers, you can create what psychologist B.J. Fogg calls a habit loop, a sequence where a cue automatically reminds you to perform a desired behavior, making it feel almost automatic over time. But how do we apply this practically? Let's consider the example of someone trying to adopt a morning exercise routine. Instead of relying on willpower to drag themselves out of bed, they could set up their environment to make exercise easier and more appealing. This might involve placing their workout clothes next to the bed, signing up for a class that requires early arrival, or creating a pre-bed routine that signals it's time to prepare for the morning workout. Over time, these small, consistent actions send a message to the brain. This is who I am. And as the brain adapts to this new pattern, the individual not only becomes more disciplined, but also begins to see themselves as a disciplined person, a shift that creates a positive feedback loop of confidence and motivation. This process isn't just about creating habits, it's about rewriting your own narrative. By aligning your environment with your desired identity, you're essentially training your brain to associate certain behaviors with who you want to be. This is why people often find that once they start living in alignment with their goals, those goals no longer feel like a struggle. They've become part of their natural way of being. In conclusion, the architecture of identity is not static, but dynamic, shaped by the interplay between environment, behavior, and brain plasticity. By understanding and leveraging these principles, you can design systems that make discipline a natural expression of who you are, rather than something you have to force. And as you do this, you'll find that the resistance you once felt fades away, replaced by a sense of ease and confidence in living as the person you've always wanted to be.